Are you getting frustrated with what to feed a teenager who's always hungry? Everybody knows that teenagers have a huge appetite. It seems like you need to feed them constantly to satisfy their hunger. It's even more difficult where teenagers who struggle with their weight truly want to make changes, like cut down on junk food or stop overeating, and they can't. There's frustration, isolation, stress, and that's why I decided to create a recipe collection of 30 easy and healthy meals for teenagers. They're all high in protein to satisfy your teenager's hunger, and they can all be ready in less than 30 minutes. If you want to grab a free copy, go to lifestyleforteens.com/recipes.
This is the Lifestyle and Weight Loss for Teens podcast. If you're a mom and want to help your child who is struggling to lose weight, you are in the right place. If you are looking for healthy lifestyle tips, Dr. Gourgari is here to help you understand the science around safe weight loss in teens and children. Because what works for adult weight loss is not always the best for children. This podcast is for educational purposes only. Dr. Gourgari does not provide medical, psychological, or nutrition therapy advice. You should not use this information to diagnose or treat any health problems without consulting your own medical practitioner. And now, your host, Dr. Jenny Gourgari.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Lifestyle and Weight Loss for Teens podcast. This is Dr. Jenny Gourgari, and I'm here today for another episode that I wanted to focus on the difficulties that teenage girls that have PCOS or polycystic ovary syndrome have with their weight. And one of the main reasons that this happens in girls that have PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome is because they have very high insulin resistance. Now, we know that insulin resistance in girls with PCOS is part of the syndrome. And one of the medications that is given to these girls to improve their periods, because often girls with PCOS don't have regular periods, is metformin. So metformin is a medication that is used to improve the insulin resistance. However, as I have mentioned in this podcast, there are natural ways that teenagers can do to improve their insulin resistance. And this rule also applies to girls that have polycystic ovary syndrome. Now, there was the great study that was done in teenage girls that have polycystic ovarian syndrome with natural ways by addressing their weight really and giving them different diets. They try to improve their insulin resistance by eating better, getting to a healthier weight, and then look and see what happens to their periods, because that is the main problem in teenage girls that have polycystic ovary syndrome is they don't have regular periods. So I wanted to talk about this because it is another example of how important is hormonal regulation, how important is weight management, particularly in teenagers that can have signs of insulin resistance. And one group of teenagers that have very high insulin resistance is also teenage girls that have polycystic ovary syndrome. So the title of this manuscript is Effect of Weight Loss on Menstrual Function in Adolescents with Polycystic Ovary Syndrome. It was done at Penn State Children's Hospital in Pennsylvania. Leading author is Dr. Rollin Ornstein. So what the researchers did in this study is they asked 24 girls that they were between the ages of 12 to 22 years of age, that they have a history of that they have a diagnosis of polycystic ovary syndrome, and they had an unhealthy weight. Their body mass index was above the 85th percentile. And then if you don't know what body mass index is, I encourage you to go back and listen to episode 1 of this podcast where I explain what is an unhealthy BMI and how you can figure out how much weight a teenager needs to lose to be in a healthy weight. But in this particular study, they asked teenage girls that had unhealthy weight or the BMI was above the 85th percentile to participate in the study, and they divide them into different groups according to different dietary plans. So the first group of teenage girls that have PCOS was instructed to follow a low carbohydrate diet, and the second group was instructed to follow a low-fat diet. And they wanted to see what would happen at the end of the study. This was a 3-month study. What would happen at the end of the study in terms of the effect of their weight, their BMI, and also what would happen in terms of their irregular periods, because that, as I said, is one of the main functions that is a problem in girls with PCOS. They have irregular periods. So for the girls that they were instructed to get on the low-fat diet, the instruction was to have no more than 40 grams of fat per day with 5 servings of starch per day, and they could eat as much fat-free dairy foods, fruits, vegetables for 12 weeks. And a serving of starch was defined as having 15 grams of carbohydrate. They also gave them multivitamins, and they told them to have extra fiber if they have problems with constipation. Now, the other group, that was the low-carb group, they were instructed to have only 20 grams of carbohydrate in the beginning for the first couple of weeks, and they could have as much fat or protein as they wanted. And then from weeks 3 through weeks 12, they asked them to have a little more carbohydrates. They could eat 40 grams of carbohydrate, and they added additional low glycemic index foods, which is foods that don't increase too much insulin, such as nuts, fruits, and whole grains. And all of them were instructed again to have at least 50 ounces per day of water. And again, they were given extra multivitamins and fiber if they have issues with constipation. So the whole study was about 3 months, 12 weeks. And during this study, they also met with a dietitian every 2 weeks that would give them recommendations, and they would talk about their diets during the study. They would do also diet histories. They would ask them what they eat. They would write them down. And of course, they would also measure clinical findings, like they would measure their blood pressure. They would ask them about their periods. They would do their weight and things like that. So what did they found? At the end of the 3 months periods, there were a total of 24 adolescents that participated in this study, 12 and 12. So it was a relatively small study. However, they found that actually both groups of teenage girls with PCOS, whether they were following the low carbohydrate plan or whether they were following the low fat diet, both of them had significant improvements in their weight. They have significant improvements in their insulin resistance, and they have significant improvements in their belly fat. And the actual weight that they lost during this program was, as a group, on average 6.5% weight loss. So they started on an average weight of 209 pounds, plus minus 41 pounds. And then after the modification in their diet, they had decreased their weight to an average of 195 pounds, plus minus 39 pounds. So this was a significant change. And the average body mass index used to be 35.7 plus minus 6, and it dropped to 32.9 plus minus 5.8. So really, and the most striking also at the end of the study is that they had improved in their menstrual function. These girls improved over the 12 weeks. 75% had periods during the course of this study, and some of them, 8 of them, had some degree of regularity, which basically gives a very important message that, first of all, if it is possible for girls that have PCOS and have high insulin resistance, it is possible to get to a healthier weight. Number two, even if you don't get to a healthy weight, even if you lose some percentage of that weight, not necessarily all the weight that you need to lose, even if you lose, in this particular study, they lost 6%, but on average, we know that if you lose even 5% of your current weight, that is significant improvement. That is so significant that can make your periods come back without any medications. And that is because they improve their insulin resistance. Number three, that is also an important point, is it doesn't matter whether you are having a low carbohydrate or a low fat diet, as long as you are consistent with the dietary plan that works for you and you're getting the results, you're getting into a healthier weight, then that is important. That is great in terms of improving your insulin resistance, because if your overall weight improves, if your overall fat distribution in your body improves, then your insulin resistance is going to improve, then you are going to get better cycles, and you're also going to get less belly fat, regardless of whether it is a low fat or a low carbohydrate diet. This was a great study, and this was only with 12 weeks of a dietary plan. Imagine if you can continue doing that and you can even get to a healthier weight, how most likely there's going to be more regularity in terms of the periods. There's going to be even greater improvement in the weight. There's even going to be greater improvement in the insulin resistance. So if you're a mom who has a teenager girl that has polycystic ovarian syndrome, don't think that it is not possible to lose weight because of that. And it is a syndrome. It's not something that is not reversible. Like teenage girls can get back to regular menses by improving their insulin resistance. Of course, there are other things that are associated with polycystic ovarian syndrome. They can have high testosterone, they can have acne, they can have extra hair, etc. And as I mentioned, this is not medical advice. So first of all, go and talk to your doctor, go and talk to your endocrinologist, pediatric endocrinologist, about the specific problem of your child. If your child has PCOS, again, this podcast episode is not meant to give any medical advice. However, it is education about the importance of getting into a healthy weight to improve insulin resistance. That is true for all teenagers. And even so, it is also true for girls that have PCOS. I hope this was helpful and giving some inspiration for you to get into the healthy habits that can improve your insulin resistance, and therefore you can regulate your periods with natural ways. If you don't want to get into any medications, or maybe you do need to get in medication, you can do it in addition to your medications, because that can enhance the effect of the medications that you are getting. That's all I had for you for today. If you found this helpful, feel free to share it with your friends and family. And if you want to stay in touch with me, you can subscribe to get my weekly newsletter. You can go to lifestyle14s.com/newsletter, and we'll be in touch. And always feel free to reach out to me with any questions or topics you'd like me to talk about. Take care.
If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, I invite you to come check out the LIFT program. It's Dr. Gourgari's 12-week coaching program for teens and their moms, where we take all this information, we apply it to your daily life, and we work together so your teenager learns how to create a healthy lifestyle so they can feel happier, more confident, less stressed, and love their body again. Visit the website at lifestyle14s.com and click on the Work With Me and free resources to learn more about this program and get free help to start this journey right away. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode of Lifestyle and Weight Loss for Teens.